Good morning, children. Today we will complete the chapter Nelson Mandela. In our previous class, we read about that great day which is being celebrated. The day is called a great day because it was a day when the blacks, those who were ill treated due to the policy of apartheid that was followed in South Africa, now they are liberated, now they are free, they are no more segregated, they are no more looked down upon. And Nelson Mandela is, in his speech, he is thanking those thousands and thousands of people due to whose sacrifices that day, great day had come. He is saying that he wants to personally thank each one of them. He says that their uh, countless sacrifices cannot be repaid. We can't even count them. Their sacrifices are so many and they are so great that we can't count them, we can't repay them. And he says he calls him as the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before him. He is saying that so many people, countless people, numberless people have sacrificed their lives, and then South Africa is able to see that great day when the blacks are given their rights, their freedom, and they are treated equally as others. So he is very, very thankful, and he says that he has no words to thank them. He can't thank them. He wants to thank them personally, but he is unable to do so because thousands of people have already sacrificed their lives, and due to those sacrifices, South Africa and the people of South Africa are able to enjoy their liberty and freedom. Now we shall continue further. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. The policy of apartheid, it was such a humiliating policy which gave such a humiliating treatment to all South Africans that he says that the policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country. It has created a wound in the hearts of my people and in my country. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. The wound is so deep, they are so deeply hurt from within that he says that they will have to spend many years to recover from that pain which they have suffered. They will be spending many years, if not generations, to recover from that wound. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sisulu, the Chief Luthulis, the Yusuf Dadus, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Sobukwis of our time, men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, generosity that their like may never be known again. So he says that although that time was a brutal period, the decades which have gone by, the time which has passed, that was a time of brutality and oppression, but it can be remembered that it had some plus points also. It had some good things to remember also. And what good things he is remembering? He is remembering all those extraordinary men who were men of courage, men of wisdom and generosity, and such men can never be produced in any country once again. Such men will never take birth in any country again. They were such great personalities. Perhaps it requires such depth of oppression to create such heights of character. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. He says that in order to be men of character, men of high character like these extraordinary men were, One has to feel that oppression from the depth of his heart. One has to feel from within, and then only they can become such great men of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. Maybe, children, you have heard that South Africa is very famous for its diamonds. So, Nelson Mandela is saying that my country is rich in minerals. South Africa is very rich in minerals and in gems that lie beneath the earth, beneath the soil, under the soil. But I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. That he says that although we are very rich as far as minerals, diamonds and gems are concerned, but our greatest wealth lie in our people, those people who are so fine and so pure, finer and purer than the diamonds which are found in South Africa. It is from these comrades, comrades means those people who fight in war, those people who fight in war, they can be called as the brave warriors in the war. Those are comrades. War or any struggle for that matter. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. So he is remembering all those brave men, due to them, due to whose sacrifices South Africa is liberated now. He says that I remember those men who were comrades in the struggle, and from them I have learned the actual meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. For an idea means for a purpose. He says that many a times, time and again, he has seen brave men and brave women risking themselves, risking their lives, and sacrificing their lives for fulfilling a purpose, for a specific resolution, for a specific idea in their mind. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. Look at the beautiful lines he is saying. See the meaning of resilience, children. It is the ability to deal with any kind of hardship and recover from its effects. So let us read what these lines are saying. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking. Stand up here means he says that he has seen brave men who have the ability to bear all the troubles, all tortures, all sacrifices, all problems that come in their way. They are such brave men that they don't break from within. Break here means they are not disheartened, they don't lose courage. They are such brave people that they keep on standing bravely. They stand bravely to face all attacks upon them. They face all hardships, all obstacles that come in their way, but they don't break from within. They are not discouraged. They don't lose heart. They continue to strive, they continue to suffer, and finally, they are the people who come out as heroes in every struggle, in every revolution that takes place, and bring about the idea of liberty, freedom, etc. I am reading this again. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. That means these brave men have shown so much of strength and so much of resilience that we can't even imagine. Their strength is so much, they are so strong from within. They have the ability to deal with every kind of hardship and recover from its effects. They are not broken, they are not disheartened when they face a problem upon themselves, when they face hardships in their life or in achieving their purpose, even if their family is tortured, they are not disheartened, they don't lose heart, they don't lose courage, and they keep on going on and on in their fight. And we can't even imagine how brave they are, how strong they are. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear but triumph over it. Very nice lines, children. See again. I learned that courage was not absence of fear but triumph over it. He says that after seeing such brave men, after seeing their bravery, their courage, he has realized one thing in life. He has understood one thing in life. What? Courage was not the absence of fear. It is not that those men who are courageous, they don't have any fear. They have fear. But why are they extraordinary? Because they know how to overcome fear. They know how to achieve victory over fear. Triumph means victory. So if a person is brave and he has a little fear within his heart, in his heart, there is no problem, because he is brave, because he knows how to overcome that fear factor, how he can overcome that fear, how he can achieve triumph or victory over it. So he has learned this great lesson in life, that courage is not the absence of fear. Everybody has fear, but courage is what courage is how you overcome that fear, how you get rid of that fear. That makes you called courageous. The brave man is not he who has not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. That is what I am saying just now, that he believes, he says, Nelson Mandela says that brave man is not he who does not feel afraid. It is not that brave people are born fearless. No, every person has fear factor. Every person feels afraid once or twice in his life, or maybe more times. But if one overcomes that fear, that actually makes him brave. That actually makes him courageous. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. The person who conquers fear, who attains victory over fear, actually he is called a brave person. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. Very true, children. You also must have seen this. You are so grown up that you will easily understand this line and this concept. Nelson Mandela says, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. When a child is born, does he know from his birth that you have to hate this person, you have to love this person belongs to the black community, so you should consider him degraded. That person belongs to this particular religion, so you should call him as untouchable, or you can call him a degraded person, you can look down upon him. No child is born with this feeling in his heart, with this feeling in his mind. How do we develop this feeling? We develop this feeling by learning things from our social setup, by learning things happening around us. No child is born with the feeling of hatred. This hatred we learn gradually from our surroundings, and that is a very sad part of the story, but it is the reality of life. We all are born to love, but we don't love each and every person. We gradually develop this misconception of hatred. We gradually learn whom to love, whom to hate, whom to look down upon, whom to make friends with. We gradually keep learning all these things, seeing things happening around us in our society. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Very nicely written lines. Nelson Mandela says that we must learn to hate. Why? If we will learn to hate, only then we will learn to love. And he says that if we can learn to hate, we can also learn to love others, because we learn to love more naturally than we learn to hate. Why he says we learn to love more naturally? As just now I have explained, that when we are born, when a child is born, he does not know anything like hatred. He does not know anything like hate. He only knows love and love. Because when he opens his eyes, he starts receiving love from his mother, from his father, from his grandparents, from his brothers, sisters, from each and everybody who comes to meet that child for the first time. So everywhere around that child, what does he experience? Love and only love. When from childhood, when from the time you have opened your eyes in this world, you are only seeing love and love around you, then what will you give in return? Obviously, you will also love others. You will also love others. So, what is the first thing that we start learning as far as emotions are concerned? We learn to love. A child becomes quite big, not less than 4-5 years of age, that he starts learning the concept of don't go there, don't talk to him, don't touch this, he's a bad boy, don't talk to him. Parents start telling this to their to their children. So gradually he develops this concept of hatred or hating. Before that, when he is a newborn child, he has only seen love, and he only gives back love to his near and dear ones. That is why Nelson Mandela is saying that no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. They must learn to hate so that they can learn to love also. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Opposite is hate. He says that we human beings learn to love more naturally than learn to hate. Even in the grimmest times in prison, grimmest time here means the most unpleasant times that he has spent in prison. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits. Now see, the meaning is given. Pushed to our limits means pushed to the last point in our ability to bear pain. That means this line shows that when Nelson Mandela, along with other fighters, along with other warriors of his country, those people who are called comrades, when they were imprisoned, they had to suffer endless tortures. They had to suffer endlessly. That their limits were tested. How much can you suffer? How much torture can your body bear? How much torture can your whole personality bear? Your mind can bear? That limit was touched when they were in prison. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity. Glimmer means a ray, a slightest ray, a hope, a dull light of humanity in one of the guards. Those guards who were guarding these prisoners, Nelson Mandela and other comrades, even those guards who were so cruel, they were trying to do all kind of tortures on these prisoners. Even in the hearts of one of the guards, Nelson Mandela could see a slight ray of humanity, a slight touch of humanity. Perhaps just for a second, maybe that touch of humanity, that light of humanity could be seen in the heart of that guard for only a second or two, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. That glimmer of humanity for 1 second was enough to tell Nelson Mandela that still people have that concept of love or humanity in their hearts. Still people are having the heart of a human being, the heart that has love, the heart that has humanity within, and keep me going. He was able to bear all tortures every day repeatedly. Just after seeing that glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, he got strength to bear everything every day. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. Beautiful line. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. That means every human being, every man has some goodness within him. Maybe for some time he is not able to show his goodness due to circumstances, due to his job, due to whatever reasons. He may have to hide his goodness, but this does not mean that his goodness has died or extinguished. No, it can never die. If you have goodness, you may hide your goodness due to various reasons, due to various circumstances. You can't show your goodness to the outside world, but that does not mean that you are no more good. Your goodness will remain in you. It can never finish, it can never extinguish. In life, every man has twin obligations. Twin obligations means two obligations, two responsibilities. Every person in his life has two responsibilities to fulfill. Let us see what. Obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children, and he has an obligation to his people, his community, and his country. We have two roles to play, two duties to perform, two obligations to fulfill. One for our family, for our parents, for our brothers and sisters, for our wives, for our husbands, for our children, and second for the country where we are born, for the countrymen, for the country, for our community where we live. In a civil and humane society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. He is saying, in a civil and humane society, in the society where we live, where the society which is called as a civilized society, where cultured human beings live, every man has to fulfill these obligations, but how he will fulfill, that depends upon his inclination, that means his interests and his abilities. I will perform my obligations in a different way, you will perform your obligations in a different way, my neighbors will perform their obligations in a different way. So every human being has these twin obligations to fulfill, but how they will fulfill them, that will differ according to your abilities, that is your abilities and inclination or interests. Some will be more inclined towards their country, some will be more inclined towards their family. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. He said that I was born in such a country that that fulfilling both obligations was not possible. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated because of his black color. Even if he wanted to serve his country as well as he was serving his family, it was not possible for him to do so. He was not allowed to do so because he belonged to the black community, and all blacks at that time in South Africa, they were not treated as equal human beings. They were punished and they were kept isolated. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart. So he says that if anybody living in South Africa wanted to fulfill his duty to his people, that means to his countrymen, then he was inevitably ripped. Unavoidably, for sure, he will be separated. Ripped means separated. He would be separated from his family, from his own people, from his home, and he was forced to live apart in isolation. A twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. What is a twilight, children? Twilight is that time when the sun has set before it gets dark. So as you can see a diminishing light in the sky at that time, similarly his existence would also be a diminishing existence, an existence of secrecy and rebellion. That person who will show his inclination to serve his country, he will be forced to leave his family and he will be forced to live a life of secrecy in isolation where nobody will be allowed to meet him, and he will have a feeling of rebellion within him that I am not able to serve my country, neither I am able to serve my family. I did not in the beginning choose to serve my people. I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. He says that I did not in the beginning choose to. Okay, sorry, I missed one line. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. So in the beginning, he gave priority to his family instead of giving priority to his people, his countrymen. But in attempting to serve his people, but when he decided to serve his people, his countrymen, he found that he is not able to fulfill his obligations as a son, as a husband, as a brother, or as a father. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was now, these paragraphs are very important, children, because you will have to remember later on how did he feel, what concept of freedom did he have when he was a small child, and how the concept of freedom changed in his mind as he grew older. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free. Free in every way that I could know. So he says, when I was a small child, I did not want to be free because according to me, I was free. I was free in every way I could know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village, free to roast mealies, mealies is corn, roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow moving bulls. So when he was a small boy, he was free to roam around wherever he wanted, run in the field, swim in the clear stream, roast corn under the stars, or ride sitting on the bull's back. So when he was allowed to do these 3-4 things, he considered that he was free. For him, freedom was only this much. He did not know a broader meaning of freedom. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. So, what was freedom for him? Obeying his parents, obeying his father, and following the customs and traditions of his tribe. Till he was doing that, nobody used to interfere, telling him what laws man has made or what laws God has made. Nobody used to teach him, because he was a small boy and he was an obedient boy. He used to obey his father and the customs of his tribe. That was enough for him at that time, at that age. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. So he says that when I grew up, when I became a young man, then I began to learn, then I began to realize that when I was a boy, the concept of freedom that I had in my mind was only an illusion. Illusion means something that appears to be true, but it is not true. Something that appears to be real, but it is not real. When he was a small boy, for him freedom was something very different. But when he grew up, when he became a young boy, a grown-up boy, then he realized that his boyhood freedom, his concept of boyhood freedom was not actually freedom. It was an illusion. And then gradually his hunger for freedom began. He started understanding what is freedom, and he wanted to get freedom not only for himself but for his countrymen. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. The transitory freedoms, transitory means temporary, transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night, read what I pleased, and to go where I chose. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I desired for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. So he is discussing with us different phases which came in his life, and in every phase his description of freedom kept on changing. He says that when he was a student, when he became a young boy, and when he was a student, then for him, what was freedom? Staying out at night was freedom. Then reading whatever he wanted to read was freedom. Later on, when he became as a young man in Johannesburg, what was freedom? I yearned for basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, what he wanted to do. If he was free to do, that was his freedom. Of earning my keep, earning his living, that was his freedom. Of marrying and having a family, this was also his freedom. The freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. So if nobody from outside interfered, if no laws interfered in his personal life, he was allowed to marry as he wished, he was allowed to do the job that he wanted, he was allowed to earn his living as he wanted. All that was freedom for him as a young man. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. Gradually, as he grew older and older, he started realizing, he started understanding that neither was he free in his country, nor his countrymen were free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. So now he realized that all those African blacks were not free. Neither was he free, nor all those who looked like him. That means the blacks who looked like him, all were not free. That is when I joined the African National Congress and that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. So when he joined the African National Congress, then his hunger to get freedom became stronger and stronger. He not only wanted freedom for himself, but more strongly he wanted freedom for his countrymen. This hunger grew gradually. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life. I am reading this again. It was this desire, which desire? Desire to get freedom. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one. Children, you must underline them, because Nelson Mandela is telling how he changed himself. Why he changed himself? Because he realized that his people, his countrymen wanted freedom, and they had all the right to live a life of dignity and self-respect. This thought animated his life, changed his life completely, transformed him from a frightened young man into a bold human being, that drove a law-abiding attorney. Attorney means a lawyer who was law-abiding, that he is referring to himself. A law-abiding, a person, a lawyer who always followed law. An awe-abiding lawyer to become a criminal. How he changed. See, he's telling the changes that came in him, that turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home, that forced a life-loving man to live a life of a monk. All these lines show the gradual change which came in Nelson Mandela. He is defining the changes which he noticed within himself. So you must learn them. I am no more virtuous. Virtuous means a person who has a very kind heart, a very loving person, a kind-hearted person. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man. But I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and the limited freedoms I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. He says that I am not ready to enjoy even smallest freedoms for myself if I see that my countrymen are not free. Freedom is indivisible. That means we can't divide freedom, that you can get freedom, I can get freedom, but she can't get or he can't get. We can't divide freedom among individuals. Everybody has the right to get freedom. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. He says that if any one person was not free, that means all my countrymen were not free. Here the word chains means not giving freedom to any one individual or a group of people. He says that if one person, if any one of my people was in chains, that means if he was not free, then I consider that all people were in chains. All people were not free. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. Oppressor and the oppressed. That means the person, oppressor here is the person who keeps others in chains, who takes away the freedom of others, and oppressed are those people who are in chains, who are as slaves or who are not free. So he says that I knew that the oppressor must be liberated or free just as the oppressed. Both the oppressor and the oppressed, both should be free. Both should be liberated. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. A man, that is the oppressor, a man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred, because he has not given liberty and freedom to others. So he is called a prisoner of hatred. he is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. Prejudice, a strong dislike without any good reason. Those people who are oppressors, who don't give freedom to others, who want to keep others in chains, who dislike others, they are those people who are prisoners of hatred. They are locked behind the bars of prejudice. They can't be called free because their brain, their mind is in bars of prejudice and narrow mindedness. They are not free. Because their minds are imprisoned within hatred, their minds, their heart is behind bars of prejudice and narrow mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken away from me. That is why he is calling the oppressor and the oppressed, both should be free. Why he says this? Because he is of the opinion that if I am taking away somebody else's freedom, then I am not free. Just in the same way as that person whose freedom has been taken away. The oppressor and the oppressed, both are not free. If the oppressor is not giving freedom to others, then he is also not free because he is behind bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. And the person, the oppressed, he is also not free because the oppressor has taken away his freedom. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. Both are not both have been robbed of humanity. Both are you can call, they are lying in the same category. The oppressor and the oppressed, both don't have humanity, he says. If we are taking away somebody else's freedom, then we don't have humanity. We are in chains. We are behind bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness and hatred. And if suppose we are oppressed, we are those people who are sufferers, then also we don't have humanity because we are in chains, we are not free, and also we are not objecting to what wrong is being done to us. So if we want humanity in the world, we want freedom in the world, then both the oppressor and the oppressed, both should be free, mentally also and physically also. So with this great message, we finish this important chapter today, children. Read each and every line of this chapter once again and try to understand the deep meaning given in every paragraph. Thank you.